Hey, what's going on? This is Mariah Kanika from the band Plush, and you're watching Guitar Tales with Dave Cohen.
And welcome to another edition of Guitar Tales. What a great bumper, Mariah. Thank you so much. Mariah is one of two-time guests on Guitar Tales, the other being our erstwhile publicist extraordinaire, Scott Guitarmicist Engel. He's been on the show twice. And I want to thank really specially the sponsor of the show, which is Charles Larita of Mischief Studios over in Pennington, New Jersey. If you have any kind of music needs in the central Jersey area, and I'll take a leap here. I'll take you as far as Philadelphia and New York because Pennington's very centrally located right off the highway. This is not just a virtual studio. This is a physical studio. I know exactly where the studio space is. You can record there. You could buy instruments there. When you get angry and Pete Townsend your guitar, you can get it fixed over there. If you want to hook up with other musicians, I know Charles is completely hooked up to the whole musical scene. If you want to help writing a song, they'll do it for you. Go to Mischief Studios. It's just a really special place with great people surrounding it. And I want to thank, as I do every week, the guy who is often behind the scenes, sometimes in the front of the scenes, Scott Guitarmicist Engel. We started our journey. He's cheering back there in the green room, our virtual green room. 2019, when this was just a kernel of an idea. And here we are right around 4 years later. I think we probably have about 50, 60 shows under our belt. Lots of people in our Guitar Tales community. So I'm very thankful for my friend. Since we were in The Cure together before The Cure ever existed, my friend of 40 plus years, Scott Guitarmicist Engel. And much more important than Scott is our guest tonight. Scott, you don't even compare to our guest tonight. Dorian Cheah, super cool guy. We were chatting before we started. He is an electric violin player and so much more. Juilliard trained, lives on the West Coast right now. He has an album, I believe it's 717, coming out very soon, if not now. And that's on all streaming platforms. He has scored movies. He has toured with the best of them. Just as a little example from my cheat sheet, Celine Dion, Jennifer Lopez, Keisha, Brie Larson, En Vogue. I'll get it right or wrong. Bernie Worrell from the Talking Heads. We have Scott Page from Pink Floyd, all sorts of others. So with a resume like that, we are thrilled to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We are really happy to see you. And believe it or not, you're our second guest who has found a beautiful way to marry the electric violin to rock and roll and all sorts of other forms. And it's such a great thing. You are, I was thinking about it during the introduction. You are our third or fourth LA resident who's been on the show.
There's a lot of us out here.
I heard there's at least a couple of musicians out there in LA.
You throw a rock and you hit three.
Yeah. It's everywhere you go. Now, let me ask you this. You look modern. And I will see so many people out there who look sort of 70s rock and roll relic-y. Do you see a lot of that up there, or is that kind of done by now?
I guess if I'm looking for it, you see whatever you look for, right? I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
And, 70s is, I don't know if it came and went again or if it came back and it's just sticking around.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, for me,
it's the best writing, right?
I love music of the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I've
the
been on
writing.
a Billy Dan kick for a while.
Yes.
And some of the greatest shit.
I have. Is it My Hometown or my college? What's that song? Back in my old town.
My Old School.
My Old School. That's horrible. I mean, I will play that 10 times in a row, literally, within the last month. I'll just keep playing it over and over again. It's just so good.
I can't remember who asked this question. It's sort of a theoretical question, like what would have happened if they had like, Pro Tools when they were making those records, because those records are just so meticulous. Everything about
Yes.
every sound on those records is so carefully placed, and
Oh, it's so perfect.
And
I
also
think
at the same time, like just so much soul, and
yeah,
so
it really is. And I'll get on a kick where I'll just have Siri just get on put together a Steely Dan channel when I'm driving, and it's sort of shocking how many great songs, and even the ones I might not know, just incredible. The musicianship, and you're right, they're literally perfect.
Yeah,
like every piece of them are perfect. It's crazy. So now, you are originally a Jersey boy, right?
I passed through.
Okay,
So I grew up in Pittsburgh.
that's right.
When I was 13, my family moved to Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Okay. Yep.
Bergen County. It's like about 30 minutes or so outside of New York City.
Yep.
And that's where I went to high school. Since you've already outed me with the Juilliard thing, that's I started at age 13 going to Juilliard pre-college.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's a pre-college division.
Wow.
And so I started at that age, and it's like an all-day Saturday program.
Okay.
So you do whatever you do during the week, which of course usually is school.
Yeah.
And then we would go into the city, and I forgot what time in the morning, but it'd be all day.
Okay.
Theory and ear training, and your principal instrument for me, which was violin. Your lessons. You be in an orchestra, so you have orchestra rehearsal, chamber music. Playing a string quartet, be in that rehearsal, and so it's like, morning till night, once a week.
So this is as a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Now, so once in a while, we actually Mariah, the musician who gave us our bumper, her musical career started at age 5 or 6 when she was learning toys in the attic without a teacher.
Yeah.
And so your story starts way before then, because if you're starting Juilliard at 13, somewhat before then, someone figured out that you had some crazy talent. So what's the backstory of that?
So what happened is my mother was a classical music, still is a classical music lover, but
Okay.
she was so driven, and we were born into a house of music. Classical
that's
music
great.
was always on the radio. Her record collection was like 95% classical music. And there was a piano in the house. And when I was about 2.5 years old, she sat down at the piano and started playing notes on the piano and saying, this is a C, this is a D, etc. And then she would play this game and turn me around and say, what note is this? And she would play it. And so she discovered that I had perfect pitch.
Wow. And people have that. That's amazing.
And so from that moment on, she was on a mission, and it became, of course, my mission, because you don't really have freedom of choice at 2.5.
Right.
And so that's what happened. And I started taking violin lessons, and I don't remember too much those first couple of years. I do remember, I have a hazy recollection of being in a Suzuki method class where there were 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
And I've never seen that, but start the kids young, and you stand in a row and you all play whatever stuff like that. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and all those things. And that's how I started to learn. And then by the time I was 5, I got a teacher, and this was in Pittsburgh. And I had, his name was Eugene Phillips.
Okay.
He played in the Pittsburgh Symphony. He was in the first violin section of the Pittsburgh Symphony.
And that's not a slouch of a music town either. I mean, that's a serious music town.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. They they were a great symphony orchestra, and it was led by at that time a man named Loren Mazel, who was renowned conductor in the classical music world. I would go. Our mother would take us to those concerts, and I remember being really young, sitting in the way back of Heinz
Okay.
Hall, the classical music venue. That's where the orchestra played and gave concerts. And remember, like, trying very quietly to unwrap my candy, and like, no, shh, you know,
Right.
you hear the
Now,
crinkling, wrap it, shh,
were
you know, and then
you were you
like
trying to be a good kid, or were you
yeah,
a little rebellious?
trying to follow the rules, you know, as
Okay,
musicians do, or we're supposed to do.
that's good. All right.
And then, you know, and then 45 minutes into the concert, you know, like falling asleep, trying, you know, just remember trying so hard to keep my eyes open, but falling asleep.
Right.
Anyway, but my violin teacher played in the orchestra, and I have very fond memories of being at Mr. Phillips' house from an early age. And he lived in this part of Pittsburgh with his wife, who's a piano teacher.
Okay.
Big house in this neighborhood called
Squirrel Hill.
You know it?
Yeah, I've been there. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a beautiful neighborhood. Yep.
Yeah, and his studio was up at the top. It was like the attic of the house. So you would go up like, I don't know, I guess it was 3 flights of stairs into his attic, and it had this certain smell of like rosin and wood and you know, he was sort of like almost like a father figure to me, but he was like a very gentle. He was really gentle and creative soul, and it was sort of it was a safe haven for me.
You know what I love about your language is that as you're starting this musical, just the description of your musical journey, you know, you could be talking just about sound and sight. You're talking about scent, and that image is such a beautiful image. And I'll bet whenever you smell that, it makes you feel positive and good and safe, right?
Yes, and I remember like in one of his bathrooms, he had these little cones of incense.
Okay.
And always sandalwood.
Interesting.
Remember, I would go into the bathroom and just close the door and light the incense.
Oh, that's great.
And just sit in there, because I don't know, it was a comforting smell, and it, you know, it was earthy, and you know, and
Yeah. And you're affiliating that with learning what would become your real craft around a human being who's treating you well and respecting you. Like, it's kind of neat. And I would imagine if anytime you smell sandalwood, I mean, there must be this sort of subtle, unconscious flood of great emotion.
I haven't talked about this, I don't know, maybe ever, but now that I think about it, I gotta like go on Amazon and see if I can buy like.
Oh, you have to. Yeah.
That's exactly like it, you know, just to get back to it, you know, because certain sensory experiences like unlock memories and just like let you kind of
absolutely
live in different worlds. And so, yeah, but yeah, that was a really great experience. And one of the things that I think is was so important to my upbringing, and I think for anybody that studies music, is perform. You know, you have to get in front of an audience. And he and his wife would hold recitals in their living room every Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
Often, probably once a month, I would perform, and you know, and they would put out chairs for all the parents, and then there would be, I don't know how many kids would perform, but you know, all the parents would come, and then there would be performances, and like those were some of my early experiences being on stage. In their
and
house.
that's a nurturing environment.
Very nurturing,
you know, and I've used the word already, but it's a safe environment. You know, you're within the walls of his Squirrel Hill home, their Squirrel Hill home, which is a beautiful tree-lined community. That's really neat, and it's nice that they exposed you to that nice and early.
Yeah, and it was, it was sort of like this separate world from the rest of my life,
Right.
and especially well, I talked about some of those sensory experiences, but performing, I really loved just getting lost in the
Yeah.
music,
Right.
and and just close my eyes and just really get lost in it, and I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable performing music in front of people. I didn't like to practice, but my
Right.
mom made me practice.
That good for her, right?
Yeah, which I mean, I now when I look back on that with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah. I mean, you got the whole Malcolm Gladwell thing with the 10,000 hours.
Yeah,
You
yeah. I mean,
know, you
true. It's
have.
like the more time you spend doing something, the better you get at it. It's
Yeah, I mean, it
really,
makes sense, right?
you know.
It's kind of commonsensical, yeah. And
Yeah,
then, so let me ask you this: so you'll spend part of your time in that happy, safe, nurturing space as you're becoming a good. You already are at that point a good enough musician to play in that home. What kind of kid are you in school?
yeah. So there's, I was pushed really hard academically,
Okay,
and so I was a good student
okay,
until I wasn't.
that that makes sense, right?
And it was around that time when we moved from Pittsburgh, we moved to New Jersey.
Jersey will do that to you.
Yeah, yeah. Blame it on New Jersey. That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but around that time, um, I just kind of rebelled against it because there was a lot of structure in my
right.
life, too much, I think. There really wasn't any unstructured time. And that's,
Yeah,
that's sort of the trade-off, for other forms of music, um, it's not like this, but in classical music, in order to really excel, it takes a tremendous amount of devotion and
right.
sacrifice early in life.
Yeah,
And that was sort of the world that I was in as a prepubescent child.
yeah. That's
Uh,
interesting, and like, and it's such a universal concept. I grew up in a town where a lot of the parents put a lot of pressure on their kids in sports and academics. Not I grew up, but my ex-wife and I raised our kids, Montgomery Township, New Jersey, and it's at one point it was like a top 3 school. So whether it's academia, musicianship, and sports, there was a lot of parental pressure, and every so often you'd see a kid buckle, or
yeah,
or not even buckle, like more like what you did, say, I kind of want a little more or a little different from this.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And I don't know, like, I don't know what's right and wrong, but if you don't have the drive in you to pursue the path that you're led on,
yeah,
then somewhere along the way, that's going to show up, and it's
yep,
going to show up, and that's the process of becoming an adult, as you start to make your own decisions. And
exactly. But
yeah,
the funny thing is, it's almost like there's no wrong path. You know, you were given a path.
that's I'm glad you said that. I think that's really true, because yeah, you make mistakes and stuff, but the mistakes that you make can end up opening up new doors
Right.
and new
Yeah.
situations. And it's, like in art, there are no wrong answers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Choices.
It's so true. And if we even decide to call it a wrong, I'll do some air quotes. And if we decide to call it a wrong, then it's a teaching moment for us. It's a self-teaching moment. And if it's a right, it's a right. But look, you're in this amazing place right now. You are the sum total of all those things that went down. And,
Yeah.
and your life looks, at least from the outside looking in, your life looks pretty damn good. And from your affect, it looks like from the inside looking out, your life seems pretty good too. So you're the sum total of all those things.
I'm pretty content right now. Things are good. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, and I was curious about that struggle, because that level of devotion, I saw it as a parent. I was not subjected to that. My parents were almost like the Charlie Brown parents when I was doing homework, because I wouldn't. They would just be saying, do your homework, and I kind of laugh and not do it. And I became a lawyer. you know, which is what I am. But I saw, when I was married, we put a little bit of pressure on our kids. We saw other parents put a lot of pressure on their kids, and then they each, and those different paths, they all end up in a pretty cool place. Most of them, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little story that sort of, I guess, I don't know if I should tell it, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
We like that on Guitar Tales.
So on I don't know, it was somewhere around 13. I had just moved to New Jersey, and I was starting school in a new place. And I had a friend who got an electric guitar for his 13th birthday. And I remember going over to his house, and he was showing it to me. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And the reason that it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen is because my upbringing was so strict that I wasn't even allowed to listen to anything other than classical music.
Gotcha.
Like, it was pretty, like, that's extreme, right? And
it is.
The only thing that I knew before I started to like venture outside of the boundaries that my parents had set was like they had some Simon and Garfunkel records.
Okay.
Record collection. And I was like, wow, that kind of has a beat, And I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. So when they would go out and like put those records on, listen to them. But anyway, at a certain point, I started to hear other music, and at the time, this was in the 80s. And so it was like the birth of the MTV era and stuff. So I was hearing that kind of music, and
by the way, I have to jump in. You're pissing me off because that means you're pretty damn close to my age. that's just pissing me the hell off. But continue with your story. Go on.
I should have probably skipped the whole era thing because I don't want to kill myself, but too late, right? Yeah. Anyway, so so I remember going over to his house, and like, I don't know, he liked Elvis Presley, and I was like, that's cool. Okay. So we were listening to Elvis Presley records, and like, I had a good ear from all this, classical music training. And so I would like figure out where the notes were on the guitar, and it was simple stuff anyway. Yeah. And, and we would just learn them and just listen and play along. And it was just so cool to hold this thing that like I saw on MTV, I'm like,
that's that's as a kid,
and then, so the school is a junior high school, and there was a music room that was run by he was the coolest music teacher ever. And he had like a couple of drum kits down there. It was in the basement of the school. He had guitar amps, and he had a whole bunch of, electric guitars and stuff down there. And so as soon as I found out about that, I'd like go down there every day after school. And some kid was like taught me how to play bar chords on the guitar. I'm like, oh, that's what that sound is, and so anyway, so now here's the part that I was like, I don't know if I should tell this story, but
you picked up the guitar and you killed the other kids so you could be the lead guitar player.
One day I would ride my bike to school. One day I brought a big plastic garbage bag with me to school and went into the room in the middle of the day. Nobody was in there, and I grabbed one of the guitars. Wow. And I put it in the plastic bag, and my plan was to steal it.
Wow.
And I did, and I got on my bike and I rode home in the middle of the day when I was supposed to be in class or lunch, and I just remember my heart pounding. Yeah. And I remember riding my bike down the block past, like, I don't remember. It was some teacher or something, and I thought I was done for. I thought I was like, this is it. My life is over. Right. But he didn't see me or whatever. I think I was just carrying this bag and riding my bike with one hand, and I rode all the way home, and I hid that thing in my bedroom closet, and I learned to play guitar that year, and I had that guitar for like probably over a year, or maybe the most of the school year before my mom found it. And, of course she freaked out. She made me.
That is fascinating.
But and I had this guitar, and it was like a Guild knockoff. It wasn't an actual Guild. It looked like, looked like the one that you see, Angus Young playing,
Okay, like an SG-ish kind of guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
I would listen to like Led Zeppelin records and try to copy the riffs, you know, like learn how to play rock and roll and Black Dog and, you know, all that stuff. And that's how I learned. I kind of like taught myself to play guitar like that.
And there's some good though, even from that quasi victimless crime, right?
Yeah.
You're here, and Scott, I meant to jump in earlier. Scott gives us comments. I'm looking, and he gets mad at me because I always give him credit instead of taking it for myself. But remember Bob Ross, the painter. He talks about the happy accidents, right? You did a mischievous kind of thing, and
I mean, I just had this desire to be that so bad, you know.
Yeah.
And there was no outlet for it, and there was no support for it.
Yeah.
So I did the only thing that I knew to do. And I had this little boom box, and I don't remember how exactly I did this, but I figured out how to I figured out how to, I don't know, I modified a cable so that I could plug it from my guitar into like the RCA jacks inputs of the boom box in the back of it.
I did the same thing as a kid.
The speakers. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Like I remember going down to the local music store and I bought a little Boss distortion pedal.
So let me wait. I got to jump in. So you've got that going on. How did you reconcile this with mom? Because she's going to hear you in the house, right? I don't know how big your house was.
My parents worked, so I had
okay.
a time when they weren't in the house.
Did they know that you had? I know the setup exactly. I did it with a radio once when I was 9th, 10th grade or something. Would you hide it from them? Did they know you had a?
No, they didn't know. So I hid my guitar in the back of my closet.
Okay.
And eventually my mom found it, and then that was that. But
no, we can't. That's like a yada yada yada. We got to slow down. So how did you guys? Because I can hear by the way you talk about mom that you guys are wonderful. So you work. It sounds like you worked through it. Like
eventually.
Well, then I will yada yada yada. But that's interesting.
I as soon as I started hearing any kind of music that wasn't classical music, and it started like when I was like 10 or 11.
Right.
I started hearing like some of the earliest stuff that I heard was like some David Bowie had some early 80s and then there was all the new wave stuff and like the pop like Duran Duran.
Yep.
I remember the Police.
Yeah. And they're doing interesting stuff musically that I think would attract you besides the rock and roll piece of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Police had all kinds of really cool stuff going on and then some of it was really moody, which really appealed to me.
Yeah. And Scott is mentioning that, a lot of rock and roll is pulling stuff out of classical.
That's true.
Have you heard Richie Blackmore? I heard something that's finding its way around YouTube. He's talking about how Smoke on the Water is really like this. I think it's bullshit.
This way. Which is not correct. It's played in fourths, rigid fourths, which is going back to the medieval times. That's how they played a lot of shorn parts, was parallel fourths. So now you have Beethoven, bum 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 bum. And I thought, play that backwards, put something to it, and you've got bum 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 bum. That's how I came up with it.
Hang on. Are you telling me?
Yes.
That the famous riff of Smoke on the Water is from Beethoven?
It's an interpretation of inversion. If you turn it back and play it back and forth, it's actually Beethoven's Fifth. So I owe him a lot of money.
I heard that too, and I tried to like
not laugh.
No, I was like, let me see. and I couldn't see it. I couldn't
No,
see it, not one to the other. But you know, who's to say? You know, I can't say he's wrong.
you probably could.
But he said "Smoke on the Water" came from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Yeah, I don't think it. I played that. It was like the first. I mean, granted, it's not it's not that level. I'm like in 8th grade. Every I want to say
That's
every
what I
boy
learned to play down in the basement of my middle school too. Yeah, "Smoke on the Water," of course.
and he's adding all this incredible musical depth and sophistication to like 3 chords.
Yeah. Well, I loved Deep Purple.
Yeah, I mean they're great.
For some of my early guitar influences was Ritchie Blackmore.
Right. And he was wonderful, but like he's waxing philosophic about that song.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, it was kind of funny to listen to, and he was talking about it as seriously as though he were Beethoven. Reflecting upon this incredible world-renowned symphony he put together, and the interviewers taking him seriously. And I make it clear on this show, I'm a crappy guitar player, so I don't have the authority, so to speak, to really question it. But all my instincts were telling me, no, this just isn't ringing true. And now we've got a true classically trained musician on, and it didn't sound to me like that was real. But
yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, yeah. I can't say what went on in his head. He wrote that song, of course.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
so
the thing is, go ahead.
I was going to say what I love about our conversation right now, like there's meaning and depth to it, and you're still 13. Like because you're not even in high school yet when we're talking about all this, right? When you're discovering rock and roll, and I had the same. I could tell you, I was in Hazlitt, New Jersey when I was taught bar chords. A girl who was older, I mean, not a woman, a girl. She taught me bar chords, and it was like the greatest thing in the world because suddenly you're all over the neck of the guitar. It's the most freeing thing in the world, But so you've got this going on, right? Are you still doing, taking lessons and engaged in classical music while this is going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was still, and like I said, there's the pre-college program at Juilliard is all day Saturdays. So that's
going on contemporaneous with this.
And it was not, definitely outside, what I was doing, where my new passion lay was completely outside the scope because, at the time there was nothing else but classical music at Juilliard,
Right. And I know a tiny bit about it only because my law partner's son plays stand-up bass and he's about to graduate from Juilliard. So just having met him, and he is actually babysit for the pain in the ass dog who is annoying me as we speak. But I know through him and through my partner, it's a challenging existence there. Did you do like Tanglewood in the summers or anything like that?
One summer I went to Aspen.
Okay.
That's it's a music festival and that was a really beautiful experience.
Okay.
I had gone to other music camps when I was like 10 and 11. I went to a place called Meadowmount, which is upstate New York.
All right.
And they really work you're locked in your practice room for like 5 hours a day.
Really?
Well, not literally locked in there, but the rules
you're in there.
Yeah, you practice a day from 8 to 12, and then again from 4 to 5.
So during this period of time, you've discovered rock and roll, but you're still in the Juilliard sort of pre-college program. What's your attitude about classical music when it's almost like you're having an affair on classical music?
I was completely disinterested.
Okay.
I didn't want any part of it. And I showed up when and where I had to.
You phoned it in.
And I would do the bare minimum.
Okay.
And, so like that was, when I look back on it, it is what it is. But there was this amazing resource for a young musician that I didn't really partake of, because my heart was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, so like I formed a band, when I was, I formed a band with some friends and I would go over to there, would go over and like write songs on guitar and rehearse with them every day after school. And and that's what I wanted to do. So
It's really, I love it because you probably at Juilliard, almost if not literally against your will, we're still growing as a musician there. You couldn't not be. Even if you were resisting, even if you were unhappy, I have to think that your musical skills were still developing on some level.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, although I would say that most of my musical development took place in Pittsburgh before I got there.
Really?
Yeah. Even though, I had one of the most world famous violin teachers who was at Juilliard, and
Okay.
I was accepted into her class. And recently I've kind of looked into like just to read more about how because some of her students are her students are among some of the most famous and successful concert violinists of the late 20th century.
Wow.
And I just didn't really show up for that because I wanted something else,
Right.
I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. Well, there's an amazing appeal to that, right?
And Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and David Gilmour, and those became my musical heroes as soon as I was old enough to become aware of what I liked, what my tastes were. That's where I looked,
Well, it's funny. Scott just wrote a great segue, and he's right. I don't know if you can see, right? If you look at your screen, Scott's talking to us periodically.
Oh,
and
I can't, but
I will be driving in my car, and I kid you not, my law partner has, and I say this to his face, through his son, he has a little bit of classical music, dare I say arrogance, even though he loves Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe and all that stuff. And I'll be listening, let's say Elvis Costello, right? Love Elvis. And then I'll have an argument with this pretend classical musician as I'm driving. Like, yes, but this is more listenable for us in this time, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care that there is more sophistication to the composition of that there is me, and I don't know that I even agree with it, more challenge to the performance of it, because if what either Jimmy Page does or what Elvis writes and sings was so easy, then every classical musician would suddenly become a zillionaire by putting it out there. So when you find yourself working your way into the world of pop and roll, more rock, obviously, I think there is incredible legitimacy to it because we listen to it. And I mean, yes, the attraction to the Eddie Van Halen, to be a rock god, that's a different category of stuff, right? But the music itself is so listenable. It makes us feel good.
It feels good immediately. And it hits on levels that don't exist in classical music.
I
think it speaks to the gut, like the power of the kick drum on the 1 and the 3 or whatever it is, like the power of the beat ignites this tribal urge, and it's as old as humanity. And it's immediate, it's like it's immediately there, and for me it was irresistible. And at the same time, I find a certain satisfaction now, like I was so far from being able to experience this back when I was studying classical music. But just as an example, I don't know, a few months ago, I went to see a violinist who I admire performing as a soloist with the LA Philharmonic.
Okay.
And the second half of the concert was a Mahler symphony. And like, there's a certain thing that happens near the very end of the fourth movement of the piece. So this is like 47 minutes into the piece, right? It's almost at the very end. And the horns come in this moment that is just, it's so powerful and so joyous. And if you were to just skip right to that part and listen to it, it's like, where's that magic that I just felt? I can't find it, you know, because it takes 47 minutes of a setup to get there, to unleash this power in this like glory, you know, and you can't get that. There's a certain thing you can't get in a 3-minute song.
Right. And that's why, and you're not saying, and you're not sort of pushing off all of classical music.
No, not at all.
And I get, yeah, it's dun, dun, dun. No, I'm thinking of a different one. There's one classical piece that speaks to me. It'll New World Symphony.
I thought that's what you were singing. Yep.
Yeah. New World and yeah. Dun, 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 dun. And it's sort of the same thing. If you've heard the piece a few times, and now I'll put it on when I'm driving, and I'm waiting for that to come. I'm waiting for it, and it's so satisfying. But here's another one, Styx. I have Styx right behind me on the wall right there. What the song is it? Dun, 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 dun. And I can't think of the song, but there's a Styx song that within those 4 minutes, a mini version. And I'm waiting for this really great power chord to come in. But yeah, like for me, New World Symphony, you know it better than I am, sure, but I'm probably waiting 20 minutes for that one part to come in. And then I start thinking about, cattle cars going across America and all these great things about the New World. That's what I put in it. But yeah, so that's great. So you have this sort of musical, emotional homecoming where you'll come back to it now and then and still love it.
Yeah, I like that word. Yeah,
it's special, and you can. I mean, you know this already, but I'll say it anyway. You can marry your love of rock and your love of classical, and they're all going to live in a happy place together.
Well, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to. I think my next project, and I've already done three pieces, and I've scored for the whole orchestra. So it's electric violin and some rock elements with a 60-piece orchestra.
Wow!
And it's really fun.
That's amazing.
It's really fun to play in that sandbox now.
I bet it is. And let me just do this. I would like, if Scott wouldn't mind, I want to build your rock and roll street cred right here. And tell me who was the guitar player on the Michael Jackson solo that you did? Was it Eddie? It was Eddie, right?
Yeah, that's Eddie Van Halen.
All right. Well, Scott, if you wouldn't mind queuing that up, it's such a great piece, and we will not be able to talk till it's done. We can't talk through it. But if you could throw it on, Scott, that would be great. If Scott would let me drop more F-bombs on this show, I would say that's effing great, but I can't say the full word. Scott and I talked about it. He just typed it in today. We were watching it right before you came on. It's not just that you played the notes. It's you got the feel, you got the nuance, you did the harmonics. And my comment on that, so reflective of our conversation today, there was rebellious joy on your face. Not just joy, rebellious joy when you're playing that. Am I wrong? Is that what you were feeling?
1,000%. I love there's an attitude and just a signature, a soul signature in his playing.
Yeah.
That just turns me on like nothing else.
He permeates this show.
And it's not necessarily, like the technique is impressive, and the speed and the clean speed of his playing and the tone, it's all amazing. But it's it's just the choices and the timing and just the feel. And I've always loved that guitar solo. Like, loved the song. It's one of the earliest bits of pop music I ever heard. I was like 11 or 12 years old.
And I thought he didn't even get paid to play that. He just did it for fun.
I read recently he just got paid scale.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Got paid. I think that's what I read.
Okay.
There was more to the story I read about it, but
not commensurate to who he was at all.
No.
Right.
Oh, right. No, there was something like, he wasn't allowed to be credited on it. He wasn't allowed to be credited on it because he was part of Van Halen.
Right.
And there was something in his contract that didn't allow.
And then Scott just wrote in, he apparently recorded it at home and just sent it to them.
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
But
it's amazing. And let me ask you this. I loved hearing, especially from you as a guest, because you understand classical and you have a very sophisticated understanding of music and you're talking about choices. Do you think Eddie's smile when he plays a role in what makes him so amazing? Because the visual of his smile, like as soon as I said that, you probably saw him smiling when he played. I think anyone who hears me say that, hears anyone say that, we all know that Eddie's smile. And I wonder if that's a piece of what makes his music so great. The joy and the effortless joy.
The joy. Well, we all can tell the difference between a fake smile and a real smile, right?
Oh my God.
Even if we don't consciously acknowledge it, there's something in us, like deep in our lizard brain, that knows when a smile comes from way down deep inside, when it comes in here. And so I would say that yes, 100% that smile is a part of it, to the extent that it comes from the same place. His smile is coming from the same place that the impulses that go to his fingers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
it all comes from this intense joy.
Yeah, I love that. The neurons that are firing off.
Felt like joy.
Yeah.
And it goes, bah! And it can't help but show up, and it comes out of every fucking. Oops, sorry. It comes out of
we need at least one F-bomb a show. I love it.
You can't stop it. It's going to come out in your face, and it's going to come out in your fingers, and it's going to come out in the way your body moves.
Yeah.
And, that's that's the real deal.
Yeah.
That's the real stuff. And it's, we can copy it. And in that case, I was trying to copy as closely as I could, note for note.
But you did more than that. Because you emote on that. You don't just play.
Thank you. I mean, I hope to do that whenever I pick up my instrument, is to let it come from that place.
And I'll make this observation. I think I'm going to guess that part of what's driving the success that you're clearly having, and let me throw it in because you won't volunteer. You're Emmy nominated. I mean, like you are the real deal. And I'm going to guess that, that struggle between childhood pressure to be classical, your desire, your rebellious desire to have freedom, and you're finding it in rock and roll. That struggle, your whole life is going to wonderfully inform your music. Like you've got Lenny Bernstein on his shoulder. and you've got Eddie Van Halen on his shoulder, and they're all chatting and they do this, and I think it's working for you. I think if you didn't, I mean, for your art, if you didn't have this shoulder informing this shoulder or this shoulder informing this shoulder, I don't think your art would be as good as it is. Like, I think that's probably a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for all of it. Even I'm so grateful for the hours in the practice room and getting in trouble and and wanting to be the cool kid, with like rock and roll hair and
you still have yours, man. Scott and I lost ours, our rock and roll hair.
It's the desire. Those desires are what it's like the bow and arrow, it's like you have that resistance and then that's where the arrow,
Right, because you've got the top of the arrow, the bottom of the arrow. You're going to find the right spot. Yeah. It's all beautiful stuff. And now and any good Guitar Tales show, and this is, God knows it's one of them, I'm looking at the clock. We've been chatting almost an hour already, and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. Yeah, this is how it usually goes with our really good shows. So before we should probably have you back on. I'll extend it right now because we could call this part one. We haven't even gotten too deep in, but I know you have 717. I wrote it down. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I worked with, this is the second album that I did with Bill Laswell.
Okay.
Who's an incredible bass player and producer who's worked with so many amazing artists. I don't know if you remember this song, Rocket by Herbie Hancock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was Bill Laswell who produced that.
Wow.
Anyway. So I did a record with Bill back in 2007 called Aura, which is also on my Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. And then this one, I sort of had this idea to do some rock covers. So like I have like that Led Zeppelin cover, Dazed and Confused.
Beautiful.
I do a version of Hallelujah, the Leonard Cohen song.
Oh yeah.
And then there's also on that album there's a cover of Vaseline by Stone Temple Pilots.
Very good song.
Who I love that band.
You said you like moody kind of music, right?
Yeah. I love. I mean, some of my favorite '90s. Stone Temple Pilots, one of my favorite bands. Period. But
yeah. The vocals are so haunting.
Oh man, Scott.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started doing the tracking for it, and Bill's in the New York area. His studio is actually in New Jersey, in Orange.
Okay.
But
he's corrupting you in Jersey.
I flew out there. I asked him like, "Hey, will you co-produce this with me?" And he said, "Yeah." So I flew out there, and we did some more tracking in his studio, and then he mixed it.
That's great.
And so that one's out there, and it's because of Bill that I got to work on my first album. I got to work with Bernie Worrell.
Yep.
And I got to work with Zakir Hussain playing tabla on that record, and Kirsch Kale, who is one of the, he's in terms of like I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, he's in terms of like Indian fusion music.
Okay.
He had this thing
going all the way back to Ravi Shankar, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but taking that and then bringing that into the 21st century.
Gotcha.
So he had this project with Bill called Tabla Beat Science. And so he brought Kirsch in on that stuff, and that was really fun to put that together. That's the album, and it is out now.
And I take it, I sound like such an old man when I ask this, when I say, how can people find your music? We have your name you know, that it's periodically scrolling on our screen. I'm assuming you've got a presence on Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram is it's Dorian Violin.
Okay.
And then the stuff, the albums, if you look under my name, Dorian Cheah, on Spotify, you'll find them there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, my TikTok also is Dorian Violin. So Instagram.
All right, because what you do is perfect to put out a bunch of TikToks too, until Congress gets rid of it, right?
To, like, you know, just it's a good way to do, like, just it's a good way to stay in the flow.
Yeah.
And started like almost a year ago, just sort of like, all right, I'm gonna post content like every day, you know, and that's the goal. I haven't quite, you know, like there have been days where I haven't done it,
Right.
but I've been doing a lot, you know, and a lot of it is just like, you know, like just come up with a track idea in 20 minutes, and usually it's just like 60 seconds long or something.
Right.
Throw it down, and then just put my camera up and record something playing on it, and then, like, you know, and that's it. And
I think that it's
what it is, and it just like keeps me creative, you know.
I was just going to say, as an artist, I would think that that's like going to the gym every day.
Yeah.
You know, it keeps your muscles loose. It keeps your muscles strong. That's very cool. Hey,
have time to like start doing all the self-critical stuff, you know, and like, I don't know if it's like, but for me, it's like, okay, well, it's good enough. I mean, it might not be good enough to invest all this time and make it into like a real record, but it's good enough to post on Instagram.
Right. And to make a moment that brings happiness and joy to people. Right.
Yeah. And here's just a vibe, you know, and scroll through it, and, you know, maybe, you know, some people will like it, and
if they don't, they just scroll down.
And you know, just scrolling. Yeah. I mean, and that's the kind of like, just do it and let it go. Kind of like, don't be invested in the result, you know, just do.
That's the hard part, I would think.
And that, and it is, but it gets easier with repetition.
Right.
You know, and it's like, so if you want to do this, if you want to be creative, then you do it, you know, and like sometimes it doesn't always have to feel inspired.
No, because tomorrow you'll remember that, when I went in that direction, it was just okay. I think, all right, I figured that out. Now I'm going to go in this direction. Then tomorrow is going to be freaking amazing.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And you never know too. And that's the other thing that I've learned is I'm pretty much the worst judge of my work. You know, like I never know when something is good or if it's not good.
That makes sense.
The moment, you know, I have no idea. And for me to act like an expert, like I know that is presumptuous and kind of arrogant. So all I know is my job is to do the thing. It's not to judge the thing. And I'm stealing that from The Artist's Way, which is this book by Julia Cameron.
Okay.
And she does these, I mean, it's a sort of it's a practice in creativity. But anyway, that's something that's in that book, which is my job as an artist is to make the art, not to judge it.
Oh, right. And then we will consume your art as we want it, as we take it, as we feel it, and as we want it. Right.
Yeah.
And your job is to pump it out there in a way that
do it.
Show up and do it in a way that's consistent with who you are and what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then we will consume it in the same way, right? We'll consume it as we want to, as we wish, as we feel it. You know?
That's right.
It's good stuff. It's good shit, as they say.
Great. It's great. And if you listen to like Rick Rubin talks about this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah, he's all over social media these days.
I know. He's got a book out. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to.
He's got a good beard. I'll tell you that. He's got that cool beard.
He's got crazy hair, yeah.
Yeah. But he's waxing philosophic all over social media these days.
I know. I've been seeing so much of him,
but what's interesting, I scroll by. I don't know why.
With a discography like that, I mean,
I know
some of the most influential music in the last 50 years.
You know? Yeah, I know. He's crazy prolific, as no one ever said, but crazy prolific. So I got to tell you, I'm going to wrap it up only because we're going to keep you all night if we keep going. And if you will agree, we'll get you back I'd love to get you back for a part 2 at some point.
Let's do it, man. For sure.
I would love that.
I would love that too. Yeah.
Yeah. This is fabulous. We've had a great time, and you know, the shows are great when we could, you and I could do 4 hours, but we probably should limit it to about an hour.
Thanks for letting me talk, man. Thanks and thanks for the back and forth. It's great, man.
We've really appreciated it. We'll scroll it all over the place, but just look for his music. It's great stuff. And I love your marriage of the classical and the rock. It's Scott put it, it's great alchemy. So thank you so much for joining us. And for all of you on Guitar Tales, I want to mention something really special before we hit our outgoing bumper with Big Daddy Abel. I was over last night in relationship to tonight's taping, at Bar Anticipation with Guitar Tales friend Tommy Janarone, putting together a great event for a wonderful rock and roll fan who had passed away, Laurie Silver. And Tommy put together some of the best cover bands anywhere ever assembled under one roof. And prominent among those bands were multiple guests from here on Guitar Tales. But Scott's going to give you the bumper from Big Daddy Abel. And I was there for that. And they just took the house down. Big Bang Baby also took the house down. But we want to thank all of you on Guitar Tales as our community grows and grows and grows, spreading love and positivity all over the place. So thank you so much for joining us. Signing off tonight on Guitar Tales. Thank you.
I'm number 2. I'm number 2. No, I was the second. That's right. I was the second one. The second on Guitar Tales, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching it right now. I'm Big Daddy Abel, the Amish Outlaws. I gotta go back to work. Here we go. Guitar Tales, watch it! Listen up!
Hi, this is Dave Cohen, host of Guitar Tales, and
Scott Guitar Mrs. Dangle.
so we put together this show every week for you guys, or at least every other week. We want you to do 2 things for us, which would be good for everyone. If you could subscribe on our YouTube channel, that would be great. And
share. Please share the videos around with your friends. Let them know Guitar Tales is out there. It's not just about guitar players. We have a lot to offer.
thank you.